12/2021 will come to order. Roll call, please.
Sure. Mr. Ferguson?
Here.
Mr. Mushak?
Here.
Mr. Baxendale? Oh, you're muted, Brian. We'll call Brian here because I see him on my screen.
Okay.
Ms. Shockley?
Here.
Ms. Langalis?
Here.
And Ms. DiMeglio?
Here.
Okay, you have quorum.
Okay. First on the agenda, I'm going to turn it over to Steve and introduce us to the planning and zoning team. Or if you have another name, go ahead, tell us.
That sounds good. If I can navigate to my PowerPoint, if I can find it, there we go. Okay, just for everybody's kind of edification, this, some of you may know that the city did a restructuring a little over a year ago. There was also a buyout program that they were instituted last, I think, September, October. And part of that was cost saving measure, and, impact for the planning and zoning department was we had all in total, up until that point, we had, I think, 4 employees with probably 110, 115 years experience between them that left the city in that very same time frame. So, that's definitely a hit. But it also, I looked at it as an opportunity to restructure and realign staff responsibilities based on how we see things going forward and the kind of work that we're seeing and the things that the city is going to be facing over the longer term. So we restructured and reassigned positions. So this chart just shows kind of the hierarchy and the structure and put some names to some faces, some of the faces and names There's a few of them I thought were going to be on the call that aren't here, but we'll see if they pop on. If not, then we'll have to just introduce them in absentia. So you know me, and you probably remember that a little over maybe 2 years ago, year and a half ago now, after Mike Rinn left, I kind of reassigned the duties of the assistant director. So Alexis Carachetti is now the assistant director and also retains her title of senior environmental officer. So I figured everybody could just hop on the screen for a second, say hello, tell you a little bit about themselves, what they do, and then I'll let them go back to their evenings. So Alexis, that would be
Steve. Alexis stepped out for a sec.
Oh, of course she did. Of course. All right, so we'll come back to Alexis. Tammy, I saw you were on there. Tammy,
I'm here. Hi, everyone. So I'm Tammy Maldonado. I'm a local. I live here in Norwalk. I've been with planning and zoning for 4 years now. I've moved up and am very happy to be the zoning enforcement officer. And I have a interest in our community, of course. And I have 2 daughters who have gone through, well, one is still at Norwalk High School. My responsibilities are essentially spearheading the zoning permits and variances.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You too.
Do you need to hear from Brian? I think you know Brian.
No,
Brian's the principal planner. So just to give you a little bit of insight that when Mike had left, Mike was the assistant director and he kind of spearheaded things with the zoning commission. So I split up the duties of the administrative function that went with the assistant director. And then this responsibilities, Brian's main responsibilities, I say, are, liaison with the zoning commission and also with your commission. So I don't know if Brian, you want to speak, or maybe he already left. It's possible.
I'm still here. That sounds good to me though.
Next up is our newest hire, who is Laura Kenny. She's the senior planner who took over for Dory Wilson. Laura's been with us around 4 weeks or so. So very excited to have Laura on the team. And Laura, if you want to just say a few words.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Kenny. I just started about a month ago. I moved to Stamford from New York City. In New York City, I had been working with the New York City Department of City Planning. So planner through and through. Before that, I received a master's in city planning. Always wanted to be a planner, and I'm really excited to be one in Norwalk.
Welcome. Thank you.
I got Alexis back up, Steve, so she's here.
Okay, we go to Alexis, then go right to John. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was a participant, not a panelist when it started. So I was talking, but you just couldn't hear me. So my name's Alexis. As Steve said, I'm the Senior Environmental Officer and am now the Assistant Director Planning and Zoning, now that we are all in one combined office down on the first floor of City Hall. I've been here for about 20 years now, since late 2001. Most of my job for most of that 20 years has been inland wetlands and watercourse administration and enforcement. And then I also do the aquifer protection regulations, which are part of zoning actually. So, and then in my spare time, I do support staff for the Conservation Commission when they're not acting as the Inland Wetland Agency. So stuff like Open Space Fund, and kind of general conservation and environmental issues throughout the city. I live in North Wilton, have 2 kids, a husband, and and that's about it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, John.
Hi, everybody. John Hayducky, Deputy Zoning Inspector. Been with the city of Norwalk since 2007. Started in the Public Works Office as a GIS intern. Moseyed on over to Planning and Zoning in 2008. Worked my way up to Deputy Zoning Inspector. I am basically in charge of violations and enforcement, bringing folks to citation hearings for possible fines if need be, to court if it gets to that point, and also the occasional ZBA meeting. So I'm everybody's favorite here in town. The citizens just love me. Basically, I've been doing this since 2016. Since then, we established the citation process, which is actually, I think, a very good thing for the city, and always looking for ways to make that better. I'm from Seymour. For those of you who don't know that, I'm that's between Bridgeport and Waterbury, going up Route 8. And don't have any kids. Don't have wife and kids, but I do have a rambunctious dog, and he's great, wily, awesome. And I'm the soccer and hockey guy in the office. So if you need to know anything about those, and horse wagering, I'm the guy. So pleasure, everybody. I know most of you, so I don't know anybody that I don't know. Pleasure.
Thank you, John.
Greg.
Yeah, so those of you who don't know me, my name is Greg Pacelli. I'm a transportation planner. I am in planning and zoning, but I'm also kind of my role is kind of shared between planning and zoning and also transportation, mobility, and parking as well. So I kind of have a dual department that I report to, and I do a lot, obviously, with a lot of the roadway projects with transportation, mobility, and parking. And, we examine and analyze a lot of the existing traffic conditions and data, and try to implement best use practices around complete street policies, and as we work towards Vision Zero policy as well for the future for the city as well. I also do a lot of CAD work as well. I've been with the city for about 2 years now, and I know I've heard a lot of your names at previous meetings because I am the chair. I am the city staff person for the Bike Walk Commission. So I have heard your names from some of the meetings. So it's nice to put names to faces. We also, between TMP and planning and zoning, we also try to look to implement better roadway use and allocate other roadway space that is available for more modes of transportation, obviously more biking and walking that we can incorporate, and also make the roadway safer as well. And I also analyze a lot of the crash data as well for the city as we go through the planning process to implement these best practices for safer travel around the city. So lots, obviously, as you've all probably kind of seen, a lot going on the transportation side for the city, and that we hope to plan for the future as well. So we're pretty excited about it as well. So I live in, and on a side note, I live in Fairfield. So I used to live in Norwalk, but now live in Fairfield.
A quick question. You, Greg, or Steve, so who pays your salary? What department?
Steve is my direct boss, so planning and zoning.
Okay, well, there you go. So you know what the allegiance is, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
All right, Christina. Oh, we can't hear you, Christina. You're not muted either. So your microphone may be off. So just so you know, while Christina's getting technology fixed, you good? Nope. So missing tonight, I thought would be here. We have two excused absences because they're on vacation. One, Michelle Andriski, who you guys have probably met a couple of different times, and Amelia Williams is also off today. Michelle is the land use planner and has been with the city probably 2.5 years, and she started out doing a similar role to what John and Tammy started out doing, kind of working front counter. And same with Amelia, who's been with the city 1.5 years maybe, and she started out front counter and is now a land use technician who works with conservation and planning and zoning, does a lot of site inspections, permitting, and kind of is a GIS master and a kind of jack of all trades. Two folks you don't see tonight, Josh Nagarito is getting his second COVID shot right as we speak. So I said, finally, that makes more sense to do that. He's been with the city about 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks now. And Jasmine Peel, who I thought was going to be on, but I don't see her. And she started, I think, a week after Josh. They're both new hires, and they're kind of like the front counter face of the department who you would see if you came in the door, along with Christina. So Christina, I don't know if you're muted or not muted. She's muted. I can't hear you. Sorry. So, nope, still can't hear you. So Christina, Steve, yeah.
I was going to say, Steve, so you're hiring, you had an open bar, you're hiring somebody else later on. And also from that article about needing temporary help or something, did you hire that person already, or?
Yeah, so we had, we also was not on the chart, or we have a new part-time admin who works with Alexis on the conservation issues. And we also brought in a temp to help us through June, the end of the fiscal year, to just get the backlog of data entry and permits out the door, basically getting the filing done and making sure all the items are entered into the city's software system. So that's kind of what they've been working on. So that's it. Sorry, the other folks aren't here, but that's who we got for tonight.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. And so we know, at least we've seen your face once. And thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all. Nice meeting you all.
Nice meeting you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have the referral from the Historical Commission, Lockwood Matthews Mansion Museum renovation report and recommended action. So who's speaking to that?
I'm going to start the process. Patsy Brescia, I'm chairman of the Lockwood Matthews Mansion Museum.
Patsy, let's want to offer our condolences on the passing of your husband there first, okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me get restarted. Obviously, I know most of you here, and I think most of you know of my long history with the city, going back into the 60s and 70s with a lot of planning and zoning projects through the years. So my current passion is Lockwood Matthews Mansion. I've been on the board 22 years, and we are at an amazing juncture right now for the museum, and I believe for the city of Norwalk. So that's what's before you tonight. The Board of Trustees raised about $150,000 in like around 205 in order to initiate and create a master plan for the building as far as mostly mechanical issues and then ultimately further restoration. At that time, it was published in 2008. We hired the architectural firm of David Scott Parker Associates of Southport John Wasilewski is on this meeting to explain and present to you where we are right now. So since 2008, we have been initiating the advancement of the mechanical issues within the park, actually, and also with the building. And that's been accomplished with a lot of cooperation between the mansion, the city, and the state of Connecticut. Not just cooperation working together, but also the financial piece of it. And when we identified what needed to be done to a building that was built during the Civil War that currently has a heating system that goes back into the early 60s, doesn't have electricity really on the second and third and fourth floors, and very little in the basement, which is an integral part of the building and the museum. So we have, in order to move forward with what we could over the years since 2008, we have segregated aspects of the plan that we could pull out of the master plan and find financing and get accomplished. And that was bringing electrical power in from West Avenue into the park and then into our building, doing a major ADA compliance project of putting an elevator in and ramps and an additional egress from the basement and other smaller projects over these years. Now we were at the point of we couldn't pull out any other pieces at this point, and so we had to move forward with the whole plan. This is under design by David Scott Parker Associates right now. We expect that and hope to be out to bid and start construction early next year. What this means is that the mansion will have to close for 2 years. We will have to physically move out of the building, not just staff and operations, but all of the furniture, all of our collections out of the mansion and into some additional space, which we're now working on trying to find and identify. It's a massive project for us. It is strictly mechanical. There is no restoration at all. We are designing to the program that we hope to accomplish. We know that we don't have all of the money that we need, and John Wasilewski will get into that probably more in detail, but we are planning the design plan and the program planning for the future. What this is going to mean when we get the new heating system, electricity, fire suppression, and safety, additional safety measures within the building, we will be able to expand our programming. Instead of being operational on a seasonal basis, we'll be able to be open and functional with programming for the full year. We will be able to have longer exhibits and a lot of other programming. So that's the broad stroke here. And I think maybe we turn it over to John or Fran. I don't know what next step you'd like to take.
Yeah, you can turn it over to who's there to speak to
okay.
it. Yep.
John Wasilewski is with David Scott Parker Associates and very involved with the building for 20 years, 15 years, a long time. A
long time, 15 years. Hello, everyone. I'm John Wasilewski. It's very nice to meet you. Thank you for your time this evening. I know there were some drawings that were submitted prior to this hearing. And in order to make this as make the most efficient use of your time, I have some other graphics that I'd like to share with you that I think will maybe clearly explain some of the things that we're planning on doing. And then afterwards, we'll be happy to address any questions that you might have. So if I'm just gonna take a second and share my screen. And give me 1 second. And sorry about that. Here we go. Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so as Patsy said, there are, this is primarily about systems upgrade to the building. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, electrical, that includes all the wiring and lighting throughout the building, bring those things up to code. The wiring in the building is quite old. Plumbing, there's not a ton of plumbing and plumbing facilities in the building. And in fact, the restrooms, as Patsy mentioned in the basement, were brought up to current ADA accessible standards several years ago, but we are adding some other restroom facilities for staff, and there are some planned upgrades to the current warming kitchen. Sprinkler is a very important component to the project. We'll be introducing sprinkler pipe throughout the entire building, which is quite challenging to do in the historic context of the mansion, and to do so without having a minimum of exposed sprinkler pipe, so that we can really treat the historic interiors properly and with care. Updated alarm systems, and then also Wi-Fi and data, in this day and age, both for administrative purposes, but even for curatorial purposes. Robust Wi-Fi is actually looking ahead to the future, and even today is very, very important. As we look at the systems, it's very important that we look at the mansion not only as it is today, but also understanding how we expect that it could best be used, because different types of spaces require different types of systems. So what I'm going to walk you through very quickly is thoughts on what some of the programming updates and changes to the building will be, and why that's important to consider now. As I show you some of these things, these are not necessarily, it's not necessarily assumed that we'll be able to implement all of these at this time, but the systems that we're planning will be done in such a way to allow for their future development. So looking at the basement of the building, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the mansion, but there is, it's a very large building, 30,000 square feet. There are several uses that we're planning for the building that it doesn't necessarily have yet. This portion, and that orients you just as you go to the driveway that leads up to the mansion that one normally approaches it today would be off in this direction. This portion of the basement here, we're presently looking at turning into archives and curatorial space. There are a lot of artifacts and records within the building. They're scattered throughout. By creating this space in the basement, which is not presently programmed for anything, we can create a proper...
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, John.
Yeah.
Mike
Yeah.
Muchak here.
Please, Mike, go ahead.
The graphic is a multicolored 4 spaces, but I'm not sure it matches what you think you're showing. I just want you to check that.
John, I think you switched out once you started sharing, so I think you need to stop share and then go to the screen you're currently looking at.
Okay. All right.
So I was brave enough to
thank you for that.
I was about to say that.
Okay. Can you see that now?
Okay. All right. Now we got a floor plan.
Now you're seeing the basement plan? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you for interrupting, Mike. I appreciate that. I had no idea.
That's okay.
Okay. So looking at the plan of the basement, the area that I'm pointing to right now is planned for future archives. That's very important when we're thinking about systems, because archives have their own special environmental requirements, especially in terms of temperature and humidity. The central location of the building, which includes this large octagonal space, is the historic bowling alley. The bowling alley, the hope is that someday that space would be restored and could be part of the public tour, and perhaps could even be used for certain kinds of events. And the last space that's important in the basement is this area here, which is actually it's a potential assembly multi-use space. One of the recent projects in the building was adding this egress access stair here, which would allow us to safely increase the assembly capacity of the basement. This is largely an open area at present. And by creating an assembly space down here, especially for things like children's programs and multi-purpose tasks and messy work that is not well suited to take place in other parts of the mansion, this actually becomes a very valuable asset that allows them to expand their program without introducing risky activities that wouldn't want to do in the the precious historic spaces upstairs.
And for those who know the building, that space is under the billiards room, so it's really a great meeting area.
This view here shows a view of the compact storage that would be inside the archives, and this is a view of that space now. And up here, the view once it's turned into archival storage. So this would actually be all compact shelving that can be stacked up and can maximize the best use of the square footage available. This is a view outside the reading room off of the main octagonal space, looking into what would be a future reading room and curator's office for the building. So this would allow for scholars and members of the public to be able to come in and actually access archival materials that are stored in the archival spaces. And here we have a view of, this is what the bowling alley looks like today. This is it restored for future use, where it could be used for as an event space. In the back, you can see a restored original wine cellar. The idea is that, and again, the work, this restoration work would not be part of this project, but it is important to understand future use so that we can get the correct systems in place now, including things like lighting and things for thermal comfort. And then finally, this is the basement meeting room. This is what that space looks like today. It's largely open. And the idea is that with not a ton of additional work, we can take that space and turn it into a place that would be appropriate for meetings, children's groups or children's activities, or other kinds of presentations. Going up to the first floor, much of the current use of that space will not change. The spaces that you see here in yellow, those are all to remain. Those are all important historic spaces and will continue to be on the tour of the most important historic spaces in the building. The places that are shown here in green, these include the rotunda, the dining room, and the billiards room. These are also important historic spaces within the building, but they're ones that are utilized during large events and gatherings. The spaces that you see here in this blue-purple color include the bookshop and the kitchen. One of the important things that we want to plan for is better use of this kitchen space. Right now, it serves as part administrative office space, copy room, storage area, lunchroom, project room, and kitchen. When events do take place in the kitchen, in the mansion, it's necessary for caterers to have a cook tent outside and actually pass things through the window. And when they do events, we were told by the people running them that they actually have to have twice as many staff as they would normally have to do an event in the mansion, because they have to have duplicate staff both inside and outside. The logistics of working here are quite difficult. The thought is without really taking anything away from other spaces in the mansion, we can actually make this a more functional warming kitchen with some slight upgrades to equipment. By adding a door right here, we can make for easy access in and out of this space. There are two things that are happening in this area. We have both the thought of this door here. There's also an egress door out of the dining room right here. And both would have otherwise have to have several steps down. The thought to get to grade, the thought here is by adding a small terrace here, we can get safe egress passage out of the dining room, easy level passage out of the kitchen, and then have a space here where there would still be a proper cook tent with regular cooking equipment. It is not the plan to make this a full commercial kitchen in which food is prepared from scratch, but rather to make it a proper warming kitchen that would work better as a rental facility or an occasional rental facility, but also fold into the regular uses of the mansion without having to install a lot of expensive commercial exhaust systems or other things that might otherwise be required that would be difficult to introduce into the building given the nature of the structure. Very few changes again on the second floor of the building, in which all of these yellow spaces are part of the historic tour or exhibit spaces. However, these areas that are shown in pink, this area, which is the upper level of the servants' wing, would become administrative staff offices. And this other area in pink would become the executive offices. So include the executive director, development personnel, bookkeeper, et cetera. In both of these areas, we are proposing to take original restroom facilities and make them functional again for the use of the staff. And this is something that was just recently reviewed with and given the blessing of the State Historic Preservation Office. The upper third floor of the building is really just used for storage. And although there are important historic spaces there, they are not accessible to the public, nor do we envision that they ever would be. But it is important that we do get upgrades to wiring. It is important that these places be sprinklered. And so systems upgrades here will be done more simply, but still important to include as part of the whole project. The same would apply to the attic space above. On the exterior of the building, there are a few things that are happening that are important to mention. One is location of air conditioning equipment on the outside, and the other is the terrace off of the kitchen that I referenced. So this is the view of the building as it looks today. And this is that same view. You can see here overlaid. This is a period view of the building, and you can actually see how much more foliage and how many more trees there were as you came from this approach. You can also sort of make out here that there was a circular traffic turnaround. Of course, traffic at that time would have been carriages and horses, but that would have been in that area. This is a view with what that might look like if one were putting that back. Now, that's something that's, there's a whole, there are other things being considered today in terms of the master plan for the park. But the reason I'm mentioning this is that off to the side here in this clump is where we would propose to put that air conditioning equipment. And you can see it again here. Again, this is, even if that circular turnaround doesn't occur, again, this is looking at it with today's, the current paving as it is, with a slight pull off here for a service vehicle, and then a bin here that would be used for waste, for refuse, as well as for air conditioning equipment. And then looking back from the mansion back towards out the driveway, again, that would be located here. And in plan, the proposal is back in this area. Now, as you look at this drawing, there's a 150-foot line that surrounds the mansion, and that's the furthest that we can place this equipment from the building. And we'd like to keep it as far away as possible in order to not change the character of the historic character of the building and introduce a prominent element that would really change your perception of what this would have been. We're looking at putting it here because we know from historic photos that this area was heavily planted. So that gives an opportunity to shield what we're putting. Also, in terms of the use of the park, there are a lot of events, festivals, fairs, and other things that happen all along this zone. And so it's important not to introduce an element like this around here and to keep this portion of the park open. And so that gives you a little insight as to what we were thinking about.
John also mentioned the noise factor.
Yes, yeah. It's important to keep it away from them because there will be some noise from this. So we don't want the noise from this coming, you know, to be able to hear this when you're actually in the mansion. And here it keeps you sort of isolated from the other various functions that are happening in the park. this is just a view of what the enclosure would look like. So it would be some period fencing with beadboard and simple but decorative posts that would be appropriate to period. It would be painted out. And then it would include, again, all of this in plan. This is a plan that shows the actual number of AC units that would be outside. And then here would be space for perhaps a small dumpster, or it could also be trash cans and recycling. So that would be directly accessible off of the driveway, and then with the equipment behind. And all of it would be concealed and ideally planted out. And then the other thing that we mentioned was this terrace off the dining room. So this is looking, where's the cursor go? Okay, so this terrace here would be looking back. I'm looking back towards the kitchen. And it's fairly low to the ground. So, you know, we would play with grade so that we could do this with only 2 risers, which is 1 less than is there presently. We would have, there would be some ramp so that we would make this would also be an accessible entrance. We have, this is the door out of the dining room. There's a door there presently. It's not historically appropriate, but there is a door there, and it is important to maintain that for egress. And then here's where we're proposing to add a door into the kitchen. So if you look at, you can see this elevation. This elevation here is the one of this kitchen. And you can see we're adding a door here with the same kind of glazing pattern as the adjacent window with a panel below. And then we're doing the same sort of thing at the dining room with a 2 light panel. It's a much taller opening, so we would have a fixed transom above it and a panel below. And again, these have been shared with and are under review by the State Historic Preservation Office. They would vastly increase the functionability of the kitchen. And I think that's everything I have. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, or to go back to any of the individual images if that would be useful to you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, but I'm gonna ask the Planning Commission. Any commissioners have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, Patsy, how you doing?
I am in.
That's good, that's good. I know this has been a part of your strategic plan for a while. I'm happy that you guys have put this together. Question for you as far as occupancy, the current occupancy, would that be able to be increased with this potential upgrade to the building? I know we use Gallagher a lot. Thinking of maybe utilizing the mansion more often. Is this an opportunity to use more of the space? I know the upstairs no, but would this be a space that could be used more frequently with this upgrade? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked the question, because that's very important and central to the museum. We are a National Historic Landmark and Museum. So our function is so different than Gallagher or Cranberry Park. We are not the kind of venue where you have parties. People cannot touch the woodwork in much of the first floor, which is where events would be. So the kind of events that we can have would be corporate meetings, corporate dinners with a minimal amount of people. You know, we have a gala there every year, and the maximum that we currently can have at a seated dinner is 120 people currently. So this is not going to change what the mansion is, or the mansion's mission, or the museum's mission. And, you know, Cranberry Park comes up all the time, every time you compare us. And actually, I was on the council when the mansion was left to, the Cranberry Park was left to Stevens College, and the city of Norwalk bought it in the late 60s, early 70s. I can't remember exactly when. We're a totally different entity. We are a historic museum, and we have been working very hard to increase the exhibits, the level of acceptance of exhibits. And we have won one national award recently. We've run 2 state awards. We're up for nomination for a couple of other national awards. At Christmas last year, USA had a poll, and we of the top 10 historic buildings in the country for Christmas exhibits or holiday exhibits. And we came in number 5, ahead of Newport and ahead of Mount Vernon. Behind Elvis Presley's, I forget what the name of his, what's the name of his home?
Graceland.
Graceland, right, yeah. So we're different, and we keep getting compared, and the money flow, the revenue is not the same. We cannot have kind of events where people are not careful of the building and protective of the building. So what it will do is, instead of being open from the early part of April to the holiday season, we will be able to be open year round, so that we will add 3 more months of income potential from programming and from tours and that kind of thing. And our mission is also educational. And that is very different than Gallagher Cranberry Park. Our mission is to educate our students in Norwalk, and we're working very hard with the Board of Education. And part of the reason we want to make that room underneath the billiards room accessible for student activity is to interface with our educational system in Norwalk and surrounding communities. So we're different. Any other questions? This comes up every year, every time we go for funding, but we are just 2 different animals. And yeah, I don't know how else to say it.
No, you explained it clear enough for me. Just when it comes to the improvements, I thought that might be a part of the strategic plan, is to have more occupancy, more use. But it's okay. I just had the question, and you answered it perfectly
well, we
fine.
can have more weddings, Steve, where we don't have construction outside.
Yeah.
Small, quiet kind of events, controlled events where we protect the building.
Makes sense.
So yeah,
I like to have our buildings used and to be shown, not to wear it down, but just to show people more of the fascination that Norwalk has to offer. That's all.
Well, this is an absolute gem for Norwalk, for the country. We had a meeting, I think it was this week, John, was it? Yeah, with the state, Monday. The State Preservation Office came down and the Department of Economic Development came down. We met at the mansion on Monday to go over these plans. And we have to present and get approval for everything that we do within the building and outside of the building from the state. We have real tough restrictions. So
I can understand.
I hope that clarifies.
There are some initiatives for the windows. I know we're talking about some energy efficiency and some mechanics, but there's some window concepts that
well, John can explain it, but they're on the inside of the units. They're not nailed in. We can't nail anything in. They're pressure mounted. John, do you want to go to that point?
Sure.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to.
Okay.
You don't have to, John.
But we are designing the heating and the air systems with the use of those windows and the windows.
They work hand in hand. They work hand in hand.
We were talking about it Monday, and we're looking at it's $100,000 to do these windows. And interestingly enough, the product is made in Connecticut. It's a Connecticut firm, so upstate by Bradley Airport.
Nice.
Yeah, which is really nice. Yeah.
You're very resourceful, Patsy.
Thanks.
May I ask a very mundane question, Brian Baxendale, John?
Yes.
Where does the electricity come in? Where are you
Where does
bringing
it come in?
Yeah, where from and where to?
Okay, so yeah, hold on one second. If you can, I can do just a real quick.
I might have missed it. I apologize. But
no, that's okay. No, I didn't actually go through. Hold on one second.
Electricity is actually to the building and in the building, but not wired within the building. That was one of the projects that we did with the city, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago now. We brought it in from West Avenue and to the building. So John?
Yeah, if I'm gonna just go right to here. Oh, okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so there's a transformer that's actually located right here, and power comes along this pathway. You can see the lines running here.
John, wait a minute. Your design hadn't loaded. Okay.
Okay, you see it now? Can you see the site plan? Okay.
Yeah.
So can you see my cursor moving on the upper center part of the screen? So right here is the transformer for the building, and power comes along this line and enters the building here. And there's new 1,000 amp service that was brought into the building. Probably, it was actually the very first project that we did probably over 10 years ago now, or probably just about 10 years ago. That was done prior to putting in the accessible elevator and
we didn't have the power to do the elevator, so this was the first step.
Right.
Thank you, John.
No worries.
All right. Anybody else?
Hi, Fran. Could I ask Patsy or John a question, please?
Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think the museum is definitely a treasure. One of the things that I've noticed and in driving by that the shades are always down, and I realize you need to do that in order to preserve what's inside. But my goal or my wish is that some days you could leave the shades open so that more people will actually kind of have a little peek in and want to go there, and it would make it more inviting. And I don't know if that's possible.
I'm with you. Every time I see it I go crazy, and every once in a while I sneak the shades up and I get reprimanded, scolded, and the shades come down. And that is, John is laughing, but we cannot have the windows open because of the damage that it does to the building. And John, hopefully the Indo windows are going to help a little bit, but.
Yes, one of the things, so Patsy mentioned earlier that we're looking at adding interior storm panels, and these would be large acrylic panels that have UV filter incorporated with them. And that's the Indo product, and it has a compression fitting, so it can be attached without having to permanently fasten it in place. But it would offer significant additional UV protection. There are places that still, I think, when the building is not open to the public, there may be time or places that were less accessible where shades might still best be left drawn. But there would be an opportunity to have them open more often, especially when at times when it was open to the public and people could come and tour the building.
But we're complying with national and state standards, and we're under strict requirements to protect the interiors of the building. I'm with you. It drives me nuts.
Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Patsy, and our condolences, of course.
Thanks.
Anyway, so you're doing good. I've been volunteering for years on the gardens around the mansion, full transparency. I do a lot of work a few times a year. I'm down there for a couple days. But there's a steady stream of people that come into the park off the highway. And unfortunately, there's no visitor center there, but cultural tourism is a huge part of tourism that's growing every year, like 20%. It's growing much faster than regular tourism. And cultural tourism adds like $15 billion a year to the Connecticut economy alone. And I just want to say that a lot of these people were from all over the world. There were a lot of international people would drive into the park when I was working there, like, you know, covered with dirt and sweat. And they'd say, where's the visitor center, which wasn't there, but the signs directed them there. But they looked over at the mansion and they said, is that open? And of course, most of the time it wasn't, because a lot of times that was off season when I was working there. But there is a steady stream of potential tourism that and economic activity that the mansion would bring in terms of drawing people to restaurants, hotels, et cetera. There's a lot of spin-off from a facility like this. So I see this as an investment in economic growth for the city and for untold number of other businesses in the area. And I'm just using that personal experience to say that, you know, I was literally directing people to Sono myself because, you know, the state had closed the visitor center, unfortunately, you know, way back when in one of the budget cuts. But that the potential there is great. And the museum is well poised to be the centerpiece of cultural tourism in the entire city of Norwalk. That's just a plug. So I just wanted to add that.
But, you know, to that point, when we received the $5 million from the state, Governor Malloy came to the museum, sat in the billiards room at a card table, and we talked for an hour or so. And his question is, what's the state going to get out of this? Why should we invest in you? You know, make your points, make it important to whether or not I bond $5 million for this project to get us going. And we did that. David, I see David Westmoreland in the background behind Mike. And David was there that day. There were just a few of us, Bob Duff and our executive director. But to that point, we had to justify why we were so important. And we really are. It's amazing that people in Norwalk don't understand the importance of the building. And there's a funny personal experience that I had, that I was on the city council, president of it in 1971, 72, 73, something like that. And when the museum became a national landmark, and I didn't even go to the event. I just, you know, I was more involved with other things, building schools and footpaths and bikeways and walkways. But now I understand how incredible this building is. So I'm trying to share that with you all.
Thank you. Next, anybody else from the commission? Okay, hearing none, that I have a few questions. I counted 18 units of the air conditioning on that drawing there, plus trash containers. I see the shielding, but are they going to be seen at all from the road? I mean, we're going to be doing a good job of shielding with the fence, and these trash things. Are they going to be your regular trash containers, or are we looking to do something else?
So yes, you wouldn't be able to see them. The air conditioning units would not be as tall as the 6-foot enclosure that we're talking about putting around it. And again, that's without a planting buffer that's also proposed to be around this, so that the hope is not only would you not see the air conditioning units, but you wouldn't even see the fence over time. As far as trash, there is room for a small dumpster if that's needed. However, given the kind of use that the mansion has now and the kind of use that Patsy was just referring to, it's probably sufficient that it would just have small containers in that area. But right now, all of those things are right up against the building. They're not very attractive. There's some bushes around them, but there's no permanent enclosure. So the idea is really to give a space for these things where you can't see them, because right now, you know, if you peek around the bushes, everything is very visible. Actually,
Friends of the mansion installed those arborvitaes in order to shield the blue cans. And I think they're on this call and we're very grateful for it. But, yeah. Yeah. It's better, certainly our plantings that are there are much better than they were sort of 5 years ago when there was nothing. And the thought is that since we do need to do an enclosure around the air conditioning equipment, it makes sense to also consolidate the service functions into one space. Our trash right now is collected by the Department of Public Works or Parks. They pick up our trash, you know, unless there's an event, and then, you know, then the vendors, we have somebody, but it's not a huge amount of trash, Fran.
No, understood. Would there be a need, you think, or is there to the area around the air conditioning and all that to be, is it a locked area, or is there a need for that? What do you think? Or we just leave it? You know, I'm thinking of vandalism. You know, you got the bike rack thing just to open up at the beach and it was vandalized a day later or whatever. Is there any thought of extra protection or locking? I don't know. I mean, we haven't gone through the details of that, but the good thing about an enclosure as we're planned is that it certainly can be locked. I think, you know, just want to make sure we can work out the logistics of that when it does need service, that it can be accessed by the service personnel quickly and easily. But, you know, but the fact that we're putting an enclosure around it, if we wanted to have it be locked, that's certainly, it's not difficult to do at all. So. Great idea. It might be something to think about, right? I like it. It's a done deal, Fran. Okay, okay. You talked about the staff being housed. Where's the staff housed now? Right now, they're scattered all over the building, and they're right now. They're kind of camped out in various spaces with not very good Wi-Fi or power. Or, you know, there's a mess of extension cords and not and bad internet service right now. So there are various places on the first floor where most of them are located, and if they're in spaces where it's not necessarily the best use, but there are spaces that are heatable off season. So part of it is also driven by where they can get heat. You know, the existing system is very expensive to run. It's not efficient. And so they tend to huddle in places where they can get warmth. Okay, okay. Now, what's your comfort level on this getting done in 2 years? You know how things go with scheduling. Mm-hmm. So I have a two-part question. So your comfort level on this taking place in 2 years, and are you looking at all at, because you're going to have different contractors doing all kinds of things, right? Any thoughts of, you know, people coming in on schedule, coming in on budget, under budget would be good. Never happens, but that would be good to offer, I don't know, maybe an incentive if everything comes, you know, not, you know, we get to the 2 year mark and we're behind 10 months or 8 months. Any of that thought going around? Oh, absolutely. Right now, just to give you a little insight into our process at the moment, we're about to release the design development set of documents for pricing for estimating. And at the time, after we get that estimate with, you know, appropriate design contingencies in place, we'll have a better sense of how we can tailor the precise scope of work that's affordable given the money that's available at this time. So we talked to you about a lot of different programming options, which many of which we wouldn't necessarily be able to do at this time. But the nuts and bolts of it, which is the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, alarm, Wi-Fi, all those things, it's our intention that all of that would be doable and done at this time.
And in terms of schedule, the thought is that the work would, construction documents would be done, it would be bid this fall, and that work would start in winter of 2022. And we're looking at an 18 to 24 month construction period. And you know, for a project like this, everyone makes more money if it's done more quickly. So that's why it's important for the museum to vacate the building so that a contractor can have clear run of the existing building in order to put the systems in place. As far as schedule beyond that, I think we need to really formally engage a construction manager at the appropriate time. But I think that the schedule is realistic. I think there are issues due to COVID in terms of cost of materials, et cetera, that are affecting construction projects and costs, and actually having a little bit of delay in our start time might work to our benefit, because we see that there's going to be some stabilization in the markets that will happen a little bit further down the road.
Are you looking to do this and you're going to shut down for 2 years, right? You got to move out. You got to move all the everything that's inside, right? You can't move. You can't move it into, let's say, the phase 4, whatever. You can't move things from one end to the other. Phase it out that way.
We've actually engaged a peer review company that has done a lot of work at the Metropolitan and the Frick Museum as far as protecting the interior of the building. The woodwork and the carpentry is the huge value of the building. And so while we're under construction, all of that woodwork and artistry has to be totally protected. So we've gone through that process. We met a few days ago, again, going over all that. So Fran, it's very complicated, and a lot of there are different levels of where we have to store things. Some are precious, some are just functional things. Some are exhibits from when the Stepford Wives was there at some of their furniture, and that is not of big value. So that doesn't have to be protected. So we're right now doing an inventory of what is in the building. And I didn't mention, but the museum trustees raised about $300,000 a few years ago and redid the library, restored the library with the wallpaper. And it took us 3 years to get that reproduced in Paris. And it cost $46,000 just for the wallpaper. And then it was $29,000 to hang it, and it's not that much. But the reason I bring this up, at the extra wallpaper that we purchased at that time is stored in a closet on the 2nd floor. And that has to be stored a certain way at a certain temperature. It's complicated. So we're working with professionals, and we're lucky that we have a board of trustees that is sensitive to all these needs. And we've had a lot of support from many of you and from the city and the state. Again, because this building it was the first mansion in the United States, the first, built in the Civil War.
Just a couple more things. All these things, if I asked, I didn't know some of these things, and I've been there for a tour and all. So think about a more robust marketing program, if you will. I had friends up from Virginia a couple of years ago, and she asked, "What can we see in Norwalk?" And I said, "You got to come see the mansion and stuff." So not everybody knows all these wonderful things, and how to get that out might be I thought the board can pick up, the thing with the windows that Tammy brought up, that plexiglass thing. St. Thomas Church has done that with the stained glass windows. If you ever drive by there, you'll see that plexiglass, whatever, to protect the stained glass. So maybe if you guys are looking into that, you can, drive by and see what's there.
And is that on the outside? That's
on the outside. On the outside.
Yeah, we're doing it on the inside. They're going to be inserts in the inside.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm always looking for a place to buy Norwalk stuff. I've been at your gift shop some years back, not recently, obviously. And I think it's there wasn't a lot of things at that time, but that could be the Norwalk place to go, right? The gift shop for Norwalk. Just some thoughts there. Okay.
Well, and that we had a problem with it because we're not open all year round, but we're there and that's what we want to do. So those are great ideas.
All right. So I would expect that you would have a project manager to drive the schedule. And then I would expect you, Patsy, to be wearing a hard hat and going around and checking all the stuff with the whip in your hand. Okay. So
I had a hard hat in the trunk of my car for years. And I said, okay, I'm going to retire. And I threw it out. So now I got to get another one.
Somebody can get you another one. Okay.
Big one. I got a big head. Big one. Thanks, Fran.
Anyway, any other commissioners with questions? So my last question is Steve Kleppen. I have the resolution here, but exactly what are we approving tonight? We're just going forward with what exactly are we doing here? Steve Kleppen, you there?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
Okay. And it only talks about to approve the improvements. There's no dollar amounts here, and I've been hearing about these things on the capital budget request, elevators many years ago, and the fire suppression. So it's warranted, it's needed, it's been in the works, a very long time. And
we have 7,500,000, 5 million from the state. And I just signed a couple of weeks ago the contract with the city for 2.5 million. So currently we have 7,500,000 and we need twice as much. So we'll be back.
All right. So Steve, our this resolution here, it does what? Moving it forward?
Correct. So since it's an A24 referral, you're just looking at the improvement to city property and making sure that improvement is consistent with the citywide plan. Since this was already a prior capital budget request, it should be pretty straightforward.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'm going to put forth the resolution as we have it here for approval. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Mike seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you, Patsy. The other gentleman, I can't think of your name right now, and all the good work.
John Wazalewski.
Yep, and it's a treasure to the city, and we want to keep it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Hey, Fran.
Yeah.
I had one latecomer from staff that popped on and sat patiently through the Lockwood Matthews Museum explanation. So can she pop on quick and say hello?
Oh, sure. That was the penance for being late. Keep going through that whole thing.
That's what I said. Jasmine just popped on, so she can say hi.
Yeah, I'm going to sign off.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Patsy. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine. I am new to the Planning and Zoning Office in Norwalk, UConn graduate, and just like planning and zoning.
So Jasmine works up front in basically, so there'll be a new experience for her in about a week when the public starts coming back in, because right now she's been we've been doing everything with the COVID protocol. So everything comes in electronically or dropped off, but now public will be coming back in. So there'll be that interaction. But basically Jasmine's been working with Josh, who I mentioned was also new, and working with Tammy directly on, basically permitting, also going out and doing inspections, looking at violations, taking pictures, going out, and those kind of things.
Thank you, Jasmine. Nice to meet you.
Welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Hi, everyone.
I owe all of them at least one beer, so maybe two for Jasmine.
Maybe two, yeah.
Yeah, maybe two. Yes, two. Okay, thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda, we have the Redevelopment Agency 40 Cross Street easement agreement for Norwalk River Valley Trail Harbor Loop. Report and recommended action. Okay, who's speaking to that?
Carly, we can't hear you. You're not muted, but your volume might be off. Still no. Nope.
Well, Steve, while she's working on the tech issue, I worked with the redevelopment agency, and Brian and Carly. Mike Yosek is also on the call tonight. This is to add the additional connectivity for the trail. We are breaking ground on the Will Walk section. There was another area that the city broke ground on a few months back, and this particular area is through a property known as 40 Cross Street, and the property owner very generously was willing to allow us to expand the scope of our easement rights from a 4-foot wide trail that was limited to very passive uses to a 6-foot wide trail that provides much more utility to the overall functioning of the pathway, and to more active uses, including biking. So we've worked with the owner of this property, who's a major real estate holder throughout the country. This is one of their real estate holdings. Again, their counsel, who's an international law firm, an international law firm down south, to put in place a more detailed, succinct, and project-driven easement for purposes of adding for additional connectivity through this property. I don't know if Carly's microphone's working yet, or is there anything she wants to add?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I think Darren covered the majority of it. Basically, the trail used to be a lease agreement. We're proposing to extend it to a easement, and it would widen the trail from the proposed original 4 feet to 6 feet, which would allow for more active uses, biking, not just walking or sitting. It would be up against a slope in the area, but close enough away from the edge. And basically it would connect the existing segments of the trail.
So do you have a picture of this? I wasn't at 40. Is this by the river over there, the parking lot? Where is this? Where is the trail?
Share my screen.
It's behind AutoZone on Belden Avenue, where Belden Avenue and Cross Street connects. Behind the buildings where it connects with the train tracks are, in between AutoZone and the train tracks.
Okay, so can you guys see my screen?
Not yet. See, I was thinking it was by the river. The river's pretty. Looking down.
There's no image, Carly. It says you're sharing, but there's no image there.
Not sure what the technical difficulties are today.
There you go.
There it is. Okay, so this top part up here, this is the piece at 40 Cross. that will be built. Over here, this is what's under construction now. And this is the Avalon over here that it'll connect to behind there.
So for what Steve said, it's behind the buildings on AutoZone on Cross Street going on to Belden or whatever. I can't see it from the small screen that I have here, but it's nothing to do with the river then, you know, going where the river is.
There's a little bit of the river that comes up behind here. So it's more like a stream than the wider part of the river down here.
Right, it's a stream, yeah.
There is water down that flows all the way behind here and comes up back here.
It looks to me as though it's around by the car park of the 40 Cross Street alongside the river. Or have I got the whole picture wrong? Okay, it's right, okay. So it is by the river and it's at the edge of the car park, which is the 40 Cross Street car park, which serves the medical facility there.
That's right. I don't know what you said, but car park. You mean the parking lot of 40 Cross Street? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is a car park. It's also a parking lot.
And that would connect, Fran, to the back of the Avalon. There's like a walkway, like a wall that you could walk from there all the way up to behind the bus station, the bus stops.
Yeah.
Where they do the gambling, the whatever they do on behind the bus stop.
Okay.
You can connect back down.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions here? No questions hearing from anybody? Okay, then I propose that proposing the resolution here to approve as stated here. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, Brian seconded. Baxendale. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Abstentions? Okay, passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've been waiting for this for a long time.
Very good.
Well, you know what? That's just a piece of the link. There's more links to that chain, Mike Rishak, along East Avenue. You can't fully connect. It's like, it's just, I don't know, they present things and I'm like, you can't even do a mile or half a mile or a quarter of a mile without having to hop off and hop back on a different road and you get lost. So it's like, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Peace mills.
Yeah.
That
No, I know. We've been waiting 42 years for one section to be finished.
Yeah, Fran, you were saying something, Fran?
I said East Avenue has been an issue. We've heard about that one for a long time, right? From the Planning Commission, but it's been, what was it, property owners or whatever?
Yeah, like personally, like I can't fully connect East Avenue just from where I'm at now. It's kind of embarrassing. Like you go down to a trail behind a building, you have to turn around and go back up the hill to 148 East Avenue. It's really embarrassing. It's like you go down, you have to go back up and cut back down. You might just stay on the East Avenue and get on the highway and connect from there to go to South Norwalk. You want to have a nice, peaceful ride and there's chains there. And it's just not conducive to someone for a consistent flow. So when I see these things, I say to myself, okay, that's probably the property owner in the city saying something, but a bigger plan, Mike has been involved with that before. It just becomes, I support it, and I just say, pray that the next person behind me will pick up the pieces and articulate in a way that other residents could actually see, because Norwalk needs these kind of connections, and that's all. Let me stop talking. Sorry, Fran.
Yeah, Steve, there's a really good story here because this property owner saw the value of having a trail go through its property. It's an enhancement for these private properties. And as more trails, as there's greater connectivity in these trails, which we're seeing actually pretty rapidly at this point, we should see a gravity towards more private property owners willing to allow connectivity. This was at no cost to the city. The property owner didn't ask for a dime. We sold it to them as a value add to their property, and they acknowledged it as such. So hopefully we can continue with the momentum.
Well, maybe
Thanks,
you can maybe you can make some strides with the East Avenue property owners, if you will. It's been visited many times. It's always been a block. Who wants to work with it? Who doesn't want to work with it? And so on and so on. And nothing gets done. So
yeah, Fran, you know, Brian's group, you know, Carly and company are really working on that. Also, TMP, it's been a huge goal of theirs. So there's definitely a drive as far as, you know, identifying, you know, the areas that we can get funding for, and gaining willingness from the landowners to drive this project to completion. So I'm sure they'll continue to push, you know, to push hard on this.
I would say continue to make the property owners see how valuable it is, and not to get paid for it, but to offer it up, right? Valuable to their
yeah. Well, so yeah, so yeah. I mean, this is a great example of a very sophisticated property owner understanding that the city was going to come in and install a 200,000, 150,000, whatever it is, a substantial project on their property, and that giving up some property rights in the form of an easement. And we got a very nice easement out of this. We got a 10-foot wide easement and a 6-foot wide trail with a 15-foot wide temporary easement for perpetual maintenance purposes. So they recognized it, and I think it, you know, it's part of the story that you know, redevelopment and TMP can continue to pitch to property owners to say, you know, look what we're doing here. And again, as you get greater connectivity, I mean, Will Walk is a huge portion of the trail, and you know, there's other portions that are that they broke ground, you know, with the summer. I believe it was the summer, and so we're going to see this coming up, and you know, so hopefully that will continue to drive the conversation around trails. I could tell you that from conversations with Deep, this is their main drive for recreational use are trails. That's what they're most interested in, and that's transitioned over the years. But for the past 5 to 10 years, they're looking to activate their grant funds for the development of trails. So there's a lot going on at the funding level, and is a really positive story in Norwalk on what it's doing to connect all these links.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add something, Fran. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Steve, I agree with you 100% that those disconnected sections are just so annoying. And the one reason is because the buildings built since 1981 have required waterfront access, public access. And so the owners built, required by zoning, the waterfront access portions of the trail since 1981. Unfortunately, there were buildings that were built prior to that city can't go in and just force anyone to build a trail. There has to be incentives, or you know, it all has to be worked out, easements, et cetera, like we're doing here. And that also there was almost an agreement to do a section of the trail under the Yankee Doodle Bridge, the 95 bridge, combining it with the 140 East Avenue, which is the other medical building. I believe that's got the address right.
Yeah, 148.
148, thank you. And then the city was working to combine those two portions so there'd be one contract. And right in the middle of it, the state said, well, we're going to shut down the trail section under the Yankee Doodle Bridge, any future for that for the next 5 or 6 years to redo the bridge. And so suddenly that got put on hold. So that's nearing an end. They are going to build the trail under the bridge, and then that connects up with St. Anne's, and which is there, which was required. St. Anne's had to build it, you know, probably 30 years ago.
Yeah, they have that.
St. Anne's
you know, Mike, they have St. Anne's put a chain fence there. There's a chain rope there that you can't even get there. You have to pick up your bike and put it over there. And also there's woodland areas with no lighting there that you have to go through the back of two buildings and
I'm aware of it.
dark.
Yeah,
sorry?
I'm totally aware of it. Yeah, I mean it's
and that's just 2 spots out of 4, and I'm talking about only a 1/8 of a mile radius, you know, or length. I'm not talking about 2 miles down. You have a problem. You got to bob and weave around there. So you know, I'm not going to stretch this issue out at all. I'm just saying that these ideas that Darren mentioned, they're good. It makes sense, but you know, there's more links to this connection, you know, that should be, you know, looked at when the time comes. Comes.
I think now everybody is looking at it. Actually, that's been prioritized. So the talk now is to look at the missing links aggressively and finally complete it. That is actually because of the NRVT advancements.
So maybe when we discuss these kind of ideas of giving these private owners more space, we should probably require some money so we can fill in these gaps of these missing pieces ourselves, fund ourselves through these, you know, kind of initiatives that, you know, private persons are looking to acquire land from us. Maybe we should ask for funds so that we can facilitate and spearhead these, you know, these gaps. That's just a thought. You know, I'm just apples to apples, you know.
Good idea.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have this massive undertaking of approval of minutes. So everybody ready? Okay. We're taking up, and I told you last time I had some changes. I reread everything and they're not egregious things, so I'm leaving everything alone. So first up is the January 13 minutes. Anybody have any changes or anything to that? Okay, hearing none, I put forth that we approve the January 13 minutes as they are. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Is that the one that I was on about the whole black issue? Was that the one? Or was that April or was that February?
No, this is January 13.
Okay.
January.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Okay. So we move forward. There's no nays or abstentions. Okay, so we've approved January 13. Next is, these were all the capital budget stuff, right? So January 19, anybody have any edits or anything? Okay, I'm putting forth to approve. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so we approved January 19. Now we have January 26. Anybody have any edits?
Was that the one with the East Wall Street historical building converted to multi-use housing?
No, this is still capital budget stuff.
Okay. Okay, just let me know when we get there.
Well, do you have them in front of you?
No, I don't.
Well, I read all these. I'm not sure which one it is that I think it was the March. I think it's March 10, what you're referring to, I believe. Okay, so January 26, putting forth to approve. I have a second.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we passed January 26. Now we go to January 27. I don't know if somebody's trying to talk. I'm hearing something in the back, but I don't hear. Is anybody, because I can't see you all. I can only see one person at a time. Okay, so we have January 27 minutes. Anybody have any edits to that? Okay, hearing none, I'm putting forth that we approve the January 27 minutes. Do I have a second? Anybody, second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Okay, so we passed the January 27th. Now we go to February 3rd. Anybody have any edits to that? Okay, hearing none, I put forth that we approve the February 3rd minutes. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none. Okay, we passed the February 3rd minutes. Now we go to February 16. Anybody have any edits? Okay, hearing none. I put forth that we approve the February 16th minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we've passed the February 16th minutes. Now we go to March 10, which is, Steve, I believe what you've been referring to. Are there any edits to the March 10th minutes?
Yeah, none of my comments were put in there. I don't think Diana did me justice in what I was expressing. I expressed my thoughts about the photos of the servant with the young child in a carriage. I'm not making a big deal about it, Steve Kleppen or anyone else, but this is important to me. When a commissioner says things that are very pointed and directed, it should be accepted and put into the minutes. I wasn't trying to push blame on anyone, but it was just my opinion I feel strong about. So I didn't want to make a big thing about it and edit things of that nature, but I hope that that situation does not happen again. If the staff could look into these things, especially images when it's presented to the commissioners. That's why I'd rather not make any extra comments on those minutes. I just wanted to talk freely, just to let you all know that it was and is a concern of mine. That's all.
So Steve, you want to, I mean, you can write something up and send it in to be included in.
No, I think if I did something like that, it will cause more than what it could be. I think it's better this way.
Okay. I mean, there's okay. We'll leave it at that then. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm putting forward the March 10th minutes. Steve, you sure that's where you want to go? I mean, it's not, you don't want to revise that paragraph that's in here at all? You don't want to, Diane?
No, you all are very familiar with that with the conversation we had, and the responses back. I think for us, it was a pretty in-depth conversation, and I don't want to rehash and dig up things, but I just want, whenever the commissioners have a concern or a comment, the gist of it should be put into the minutes if it's something that was explained and clarified. So I'd rather just leave it like that.
Okay, agreed. All right.
Thank you.
So I'm going to put forth March 10th minutes as they are listed here for approval. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we have approved the March 10th. Now we go to the last grouping April 14 minutes. Anybody have any edits to that? Okay, hearing none, I'm putting forth the April 14 minutes for approval. Do I have a second? Don't know, John. Go ahead. Who's second?
Steve.
Okay, Steve, very good. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. And this takes care of all the minutes up to April 14. I don't want to get behind like this again. It's been arduous work. So thank you all. And moving on to comments of director.
And I got a couple of questions I'd like to ask.
Go ahead. When we get to, you want to ask it of Steve, or you want to make it at the comments of commissioners?
Ask it of Steve, basically. I wonder where we are in relation to the investment fee for apartments which are not being funded by the developer, and are in fact getting full rental revenue. It was left on the table. I know Steve was looking at other organizations, and I believe there's a few financial calculations which have been thrown his way.
Right, so the zoning commission held their hearing on the proposed amendment that you reviewed at your last meeting, and they approved it unanimously. We did talk about the increasing the fee, and as part of that, we looked at the other towns that were doing that. Fairfield has a fee which is half of what we proposed, and our fee matches the same fee that New Canaan has. I didn't see any other towns in the state that had enacted a fee similar to what we were talking about. I looked at, Brian had sent me some information about some thoughts he had that were pretty interesting. And I think it merits discussion maybe at a future date. I've had several conversations with developers, both large and small, about the fee that went on, that was proposed and ultimately passed. They had brought up some really good points in terms of the reporting and the management of the units. A lot of the bigger companies have, take BLT, for example, if they have a couple developments with 50, 60 to 100 units of workforce housing, they'll hire an outside firm that manages the workforce units. So what's involved with that is that, annually they need to make sure that the individuals that are renting those units don't exceed the income requirements. So there's financial papers they need to get from them. And so it's kind of a lot of work to get all that organized. And they, one of the concerns raised was if you pass that on to smaller developers who they have one or two units here, one or two units there, they may not be able to, it might be a larger financial burden for them to have an outside firm do that reporting for them. So that's an additional cost that they have to bear, an additional time that they have to bear as part of it. So the zoning commission looked at that and said, you know what, we're going to leave the fee as it is proposed for now and revisit it in the future, because they said, we're just about to get into the middle of the zoning regulations rewrite. So, if during that process we think it needs to get adjusted, we can adjust it at that time. That's kind of how it was left.
Thanks, Steve. So can I just suggest, therefore, we have the financial proposition put clearly on the table by the developers, which is fine. But this is about 1 or 0.7 of a unit, which is obviously not given as a workforce dwelling, but is in fact then put at a full rental. The significant cash flow benefit, as I understand it, at least initially, to the developer over a 10-year life, way in excess of the, let's say, whatever example you've had so far. I understand there's a cost against that for managing the property, but I think just looking at on apartment, which is what we're normally talking about, they get full value for that, but we don't get a workforce apartment. So
Right. All right, so Steve,
what was the final decision?
So the amendment was passed as proposed. It's the same amendment that you had passed as well. So the resolution that you forwarded to the zoning commission had recommended that that fee be increased, but they said, let's just leave it at what was proposed for now.
That was 5%?
No.
Like $10 per, go ahead.
What was it?
$10 per thousand of cost of construction.
Of the total development.
Right.
So, Steve, along those lines, can you just talk a little bit about, I have a question on, this fund is up and running. How much money is in there? Has it been accessed? And what's the who controls it? And what's the process for accessing it? Is it written up? Is it somebody's head, or where are we with that stuff?
So there's been 3 projects that have elected to pay the fee under the current regulation. Only one of them has been completed so far. That's the 121, 123 Water Street, which I don't know if that's called Sono Harbor or Sono Wharf. It's Tom Rich's development. That's right down near Soundview Landing. So that one, you may recall, or maybe not, was the first phase of that was approved before the South Norwalk TOD regulations were passed in 2019. Once those regulations were amended and passed, they got the benefit of additional density, so they came back and modified their plan. So what they did was they split the workforce housing units up by phase. So the first phase, they did the prior regulations, and then the second phase, they did the new regulations. And in that second phase, they opted to pay the fee, which was just a little over $60,000. So that's the only funds that have been collected to date. The project under development at 1 Chestnut Street, which is the one right next to the train station, that's come out of the ground pretty far and probably will be done later this year. That one is also opted to pay the fee, and they'll have to do that before they can get their CO. And the third project that has opted for that, which hasn't begun construction yet, is the Pinnacle at Waypoint. So if and when they start construction and get in that process, they'll have to pay the fee before they can wrap up.
See, for clarification, when you're saying opting to pay the fee, that means we're opting to pay a fee instead of having affordable housing?
No. So the regulations that you passed and as they were on the books before, there are, and I can pull it up if you want to see it. There are 2 options available to the developer, whomever at that point, you want to call them developer. They can elect to. So they'll have to do 10% of the units have to meet the workforce housing requirements. There's 2 paths they can take. One, the simpler path is they have the 10% of the units at 60% state median income. If they elect to put the units at 80% state median income, they also need to pay the fee on top of that. So regardless, they have to provide the workforce units. The only question is what the rents that those units are going to be charged, lower or a little higher. That's how the 2 brackets.
So what is the trend? The trend is going for the 80% and paying a fee. What is the trend for most of these developers?
It's been a mix. I don't think we have enough developments that have been approved as part of that program to say which way they're going to go for sure. But, we probably will know more over the next 12 to 18 months, I would say.
So Steve, are you formalizing a process? I mean, right now, that fund is with you, right? The Planning and Zoning Office and
right.
The process, right? Go ahead.
So the money right now, how it was set up, goes into a special revenue account, so it can't be touched, can't be general fund money. we, per your comments and were good suggestions, we've been talking to finance as well as, Darren, who was on the call earlier about the easement, about a different model. So the Fairfield and Stanford have set up special housing trust funds. So I think we're getting a little more information from their staff on how they do that and how it's processed. And based on our recommendation or conversations with Corporation Counsel, they'll have conversations with their counterpart, and then probably, I think that's the route we'll probably go, which gives a little more security into that process. And then what will probably have to happen is someone comes forward with a request to access those funds or part of the funds, however, whatever the pool of money is in there. And then they'll have to go in front of BET and council to get access to those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so you asked our questions. What were you going to say as comments of the director?
Let me see. The industrial zone study, we had the meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe. It was a public meeting. Went through Zoom, and it was a little different because I did breakout rooms. I think I sent the links around with hopefully an explanation that made sense on if you wanted to watch all the rooms or not watch all the rooms. So based on that, the consultant is drafting now, which I should get a copy of within the next week or so, the draft report. And at that juncture, it will go back after some edits to the committee again for their comment and review. Once they do that, then we'll probably put it out for public comment and then see where we go in terms of whether we need to do another public meeting or not. After we get past that juncture, ultimately it's going to have to get it included into the citywide plan. So that'll be an amendment to the citywide plan, which comes back to you guys. And then ultimately goes again to Common Council for their approval as well.
Okay. Anything else that you have?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I can't think of anything now.
The zoning issues from Hartford, the zoning, I know there was, I read something about there was a demonstration this weekend or something, I don't know. Keep zoning local versus being pushed down from Hartford. Any, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, we had a meeting with, we've had meetings with folks from Bob Duff's office. Lou Schulman, who chairs the zoning commission, is very interested in some aspects of the bill. There's two bills that are, gaining the most kind of conversation. One is House Bill 1024. That was, when it was first put out, had a lot of significant implications for the city and lots of other places. It's been cut back so much that a lot of the kind of things that I thought were really problematic have been removed, but there is an effort to try to get some of those things put back into the bill by some groups that are pushing the legislation. So we're continuing to have talks with Bob Duff's office and other representatives to see where that stands. There's another bill, which I think was a Senate bill, which if I'm remembering correctly, was 6611. And that one I just thought would be very problematic. I think it had a lot of items in there, which a lot of unfunded mandates for additional housing plans that, you'd have to do when we already have to do an affordable housing plan by fall of 2022. And a lot of other kind of things that I thought were broad overreaches. It did have some, all the bills have some things that are good in them, but then there's some things that just seem to not, make sense from just a simple planning perspective.
Okay. All right, so now we move to comments of commissioners.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
At the last meeting, I needed clarification, and I think we were emailing, and Fran, you said to bring it up at the next commission meeting. I wasn't clear on the process when the amendment for the workforce housing came before us. And my question was dealing with the procedure where you, Steve, could put in a recommendation for a zoning change, and then it would be submitted to your department. It would be drafted, and then you would present it to the planning and zoning commissions, and then you would implement it. And I felt there was a lack of procedural due process because you were always at the helm of drafting the legislation, presenting the legislation, and then implementing the legislation. And I had requested whether this was procedural due process and whether I could get a legal opinion from corporate counsel.
You want me to respond, or are you looking for Fran to respond?
I'm looking for anyone to respond. This was my first initiation in this process at the last session, where I just saw one person involved in the total process.
No, Steve, this was on you. So
sure, but I mean, I think that's one of my primary job functions, is to look at regulations, and if there's something that's not correct or things that we think should be included, we bring those to the attention to the zoning commission. Ultimately, once we prepare something, or at least look at it conceptually, the zoning commission ultimately becomes their amendment, and at that juncture, they need to, if they say, you know what, we'd like to take this to public hearing and include it in the regulations, it gets referred out to the planning commission as required by statute. I don't think there's any conflict of interest at all, because I don't benefit by any of this outside of
no, it's not a conflict, it's procedural due process. My concern is that because you initiate the amendment, you give it to your staff, then you present it to the commissioners, we're not hearing pros and cons. We're just hearing your presentation, and you are the one who initiated the amendment. So my concern is that procedural due process is we hear the pros and cons and the balance of considerations. And if you are at the helm from beginning to end, then we're not hearing the pros and cons of an issue. And that's my concern. That was my concern at the last hearing when you presented the amendment, is the procedural issue of not only hearing your view, as you said, you put on under section 118, section 1440, you put on your hat as a citizen, then you present it, then you go back to your department, you draft it, then you come to us and you present it, and then at the end of the day, it goes back to your office to implement it. So I don't see where there could be, and I'm not saying you personally, but it could lead to decisions being arbitrary because we're only hearing one position.
Well, I think, a couple of things. A, when you say citizen, I'm not a citizen of Norwalk. So I have no skin in the game in terms of if a regulation gets written, it doesn't harm me or benefit me in one way or the other. My interest is simply making sure that the code and then what gets implemented benefits the city. There is the due process comes in at the zoning commission level. They must hold a public hearing on any amendment to the regulations, whether it's adding a comma or adding the word "the" to a sentence. They have to go through that process. The planning commission's function is just simply looking at the amendment and seeing, and you're making a determination whether you feel it's consistent with the citywide plan or not. So that part of it is on you. You're getting the text in black and white, looking at the words and seeing if those words are appropriate or inconsistent or not. And then if you feel they're not, then that you pass that decision on to the zoning commission, and they take that into consideration when they make their vote.
But Steve, last session, I asked, how did you initiate this amendment? And you said, and you sent to me, it was under section 18-1440, as a citizen or group of citizens may file with the staff of the zoning commission. You were the one who implemented, but you're now telling me you're not a citizen. So how do you initiate an amendment? And to me, it's important in the context of zoning regulations. Zoning regulations are very important for the city of Norwalk. So I'm just interested in making sure that the procedures for amending zoning regulations for the city of Norwalk is clear and takes in consideration due process as well as the pros and cons of each amendment, pros and cons of each recommendation that comes to the commission.
So anybody can make an amendment or propose an amendment to the regulations. It doesn't matter. You could be, you don't have to be a resident of the city. You don't have to be, I mean, there's no limitation on that whatsoever. I'm an agent of this commission and an agent of the zoning commission. And by, you know, my duties of my position, it's my job to look at things, and that the citywide plan kind of is my playbook and my roadmap of tasks and jobs that I have to make sure happen. And sometimes things pop up that, oh, you know what, let's look at this now. And sometimes, you know, things get kind of put on the back burner until we have time to get to them. It's kind of, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but kind of part of my job is sit around and thinking of ways that I can help make things better. And sometimes if in this case, an affordable housing regulation, which I think would benefit people, that's what we push forward. And if the commission ultimately just doesn't think it's a good idea, it shouldn't get passed. I mean, that's
my
kind of
concern, though, Steve, is that when you present it, you may, and if it's your idea, if you feel that this is what is for the best of the community, is that we may not be presented with both sides. And for me as commissioner, I need to hear both positions. I need to hear the pros, which you would present, but I also need to hear the cons.
Especially hey, Tamara, I don't know what that means, the pros and cons. No, hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
I see Steve is an employee. I see him as the agent for the city, okay? So in his capacity of being the director of planning and zoning, and he puts forth whatever language, whatever it is, right? Because in his role as that director of planning and zoning, it's his role to present to commission, zoning, planning, conservation, whatever, what he thinks in his capacity would be good for the city, right? So I don't know what pros and cons would come into that. When it comes to us, right? Then it comes to us, planning commission, then it's our job to question up, down, and in between, if we so feel, you know, to punch holes in it if we don't agree. So where are you coming from?
I'm coming from that he may not give us the full information. That's where I'm coming from. If it's his idea that he initiates at the very beginning, that he may want to push his idea through. I'm coming from the position, I want to hear everything. I want to hear the pros for this particular amendment. I also want to hear the cons. Then I can make a decision. But if you're going to come and make a suggestion that I think that this is what's going to be good for the city, I'm going to present it to the commission and to the planning and to the zoning commission. We may not hear both sides. And we need to hear both sides in order to make a decision on behalf of the city. That's where I'm coming from.
Again, though, I mean, as we talked about at your last meeting, unfortunately, that's not the planning commission's role in this function. That the process laid out by the city is that the zoning commission refers to you. Your role is simply to look at the words presented and make a determination whether you think these words and the changes that would occur are consistent with the citywide plan. Now, in the case of, I mean, we can argue about whether the fee was too small or appropriate or not appropriate, but the language in the citywide plan is pretty clear about looking at and adding more affordable housing and more housing options. So unless you came to the conclusion that what was proposed wouldn't lead to that, then I think your task is simply to say, okay, yes, that makes sense. And then if you have changes you would like to make those changes as you put in your resolution to the zoning commission. The zoning commission, as I stated, ultimately has to have a public hearing where they hear both sides of it. And they did. They heard 2, maybe 3 people who had opposition opinions and got to express their concerns. The zoning commission has to take those into account and then ultimately make a decision on the action presented to them.
But then we're only making a decision based on the facts as you present to us. If you're saying, is that what you're saying? That you present us with the facts and we can only make a decision based on those facts and looking at the words that you've drafted and written before us. That's it? That's a lot
Yes.
of power for one person. That's a lot of power for one person.
Again, it's not me making the ultimate decision. It's the zoning commission making the decision. The zoning commission is the body charged. The way this city of Norwalk set it up is they're the body charged with making that decision, not the planning commission. I mean, the planning commission has a singular function. Same thing with the 824 referrals. Your 824 referral is you're looking, is this proposal consistent with the citywide plan? Or is the improvement to Lockwood Matthews consistent with the citywide plan? That's why the resolution presented to you pulls items from the citywide plan that supports the initiative that's proposed. Or if it was an action that was counter, then you would get a different resolution.
I'm going to bring this to a close, but just for the record, I do have problems with a procedure where only one person has control of the entire process. And I want that on the record.
Okay. Any other comments from any other commissioners?
And sorry, I skipped in early last time. One little question for Steve. Where are we on the accessory dwelling units as a fact inside the whole of the zoning within Norwalk? Or is it just still being considered?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase, Brian? I wasn't quite, I know you were accessory dwelling units, but I wasn't sure what you were actually asking.
Yeah, accessory dwelling units, are they permitted throughout the whole of Norwalk at this current point in time? Or only being considered and recommended, for example, in the East Norwalk transit-oriented development plan?
So accessory dwelling units are permitted in most of the single family residential zones. I'd have to go pull the regulation up to see if they're allowed in every single one, but I think they are pretty much are in the single family zones. They have to be part of the main house. That House Bill 1024 that we were talking about a little while ago, that does have language in there about accessory dwelling units, which makes them even more permissible than Norwalk has them. And Norwalk is pretty permissible compared to a lot of other places. One of the provisions that they recommend in that bill is to also allow them in detached structures. That's one thing that Norwalk doesn't allow. So that would be a change that could come forward out of that bill. For the East Norwalk TOD plan, it wouldn't be allowed in the TOD area itself because that doesn't allow single or two family dwellings, but it would allow multifamily.
But Steve, surely in the East Norwalk TOD, we put in accessory dwelling units so that the top floor, for example, of a current workshop area could be a dwelling unit. That's an accessory.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to define them that way, yeah, there would be dwelling units allowed. They're not, our regulations as they currently are have a specific definition of an accessory dwelling unit. So I don't want to mix up the terminology if that,
okay.
But it is proposed to allow dwelling units above the commercial. So if that's what you're referring to.
Okay, that's my confusion. Thanks for the direction. Thank you, Fran.
Anybody else?
And this is Tamara again. Just one thing. Is it possible that I, as a commissioner, can request a legal opinion from corporate counsel?
I'm going to say no, unless the us commissioners cannot just go to legal and engage them and say, well, gee, give me a legal opinion on this, because we're taxing them to do other stuff. So we're not, as a commissioner, and Steve, you can agree or disagree. I believe that we don't ask as individual commissioners. If the planning commission decides that an issue is big enough that we need a legal opinion. Now, on your issue here, I'm gonna, I hear what you're saying, but I still look at Steve. I don't see a conflict of interest. I see it as Steve's job.
It's not, the word's not conflict of interest, it's procedural due process, two different things. It's procedural due process.
Well, you say you're looking for pros and cons and whatever. So I see that process, the pros and cons, when it comes in our limited, in our scope of what we can do from a planning commission. And pros and cons with the zoning commission and their public hearings and all that. So there's opportunity to agree, disagree, or punch holes in whatever Steve is putting forth. But I would have to, if Steve is not the person and that can to put things forward to us commissioners of whatever boards we're on, then what is his job then, right? I mean, it's his job to do that, to put forth, and in his role as the top planning and zoning person, to put that forward. And I'm sorry if I went off here, I'm running out of power. I'm gonna have to plug in soon. So unless the whole, and I'm not in favor of it, I believe we don't ask as individuals of the legal department, and unless everybody says, well, this is a big to do, we need to get legal opinion, it doesn't get done.
Well, I'm going to put my request in, and I would like that to be reflected on the record, that I request the legal opinion of corporate counsel on the administrative procedure due process of the amendment of regulations, special zoning regulations by the Director of Planning and Zoning Department.
So you're going to put it into the record, but it's not going to the legal department.
I want it on record. I want it on record.
Okay, I couldn't hear you.
That it has been an issue that has been raised by the commission, by one of the commissioners, and although it was not addressed, I want it on record that I've raised this issue of procedural due process. Okay, Diane, you clear on what needs to be done? I mean, you're gonna put it in the record, correct? Is Diane on, or is she on mute?
She's nodding.
She's nodding? Okay.
Yes, I heard. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, so before I run out of power and we can close this, so I have to plug in, I have, unless there's anybody else, any commissioner comments? Okay, I have one. I got a phone call from Tom Livingston, and we had a conversation that the ordinance committee of the Common Council is in early stages discussing, or whatever, they're moving forward on proposal to combine planning and zoning. So that's being, I mean, it's a way off, whatever the process is, but so if you hear this and all that, yep, I was contacted by Tom Livingston. I know Steve brought it up at the last meeting that things were being looked at. So the process has begun as to what it all means. It will unfold, okay? That's all I have. Anything else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second it. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Be well.
Everybody have a good evening.
Thanks, Ram.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Good night.
Bye-bye.